Good morning.
Hey guys,
Good morning. Good to see you guys.
good to see you too. What are we chatting about today?
Well, we're recording this July 15th. Big news story of the weekend was potential assassination attempt on former president. So up our alley kind of in two ways of talk about estate planning. Bad things happen to good people. We had another famous Baltimore Raven that passed away this weekend at a pretty young age. So I think it's a good reminder that we were talking about a little earlier of just making sure that we have those preparations in order. And I know, Greg, you were talking about probate. You want to share a little bit about that?
I mean, this is not a topic that you want to discuss because it reminds us that we're all not going to be on this earth forever. And talking about uncomfortable topics about what happens when you pass away. I think the theme that to keep in mind is when you're dealing with your own mortality is just trying to make it as easy as possible for the loved ones that are still here. And if you're in that mindset, I've found that it's easier to talk about and clients are more willing to say, okay, and they kind of remove that brick wall that they put up about I'm bulletproof, right? So one of the major elements to look at are beneficiary designations and making sure you have primary and contingent on the accounts that have beneficiary designations available. A couple other tidbits that we have found is, for example, your cars. You can put a beneficiary designation, at least in Maryland, on your car, which allows the car to avoid probate. And depending on how much the car is worth, that could send you in a complex estate rather than filing in a simplistic estate in Maryland. So that's huge. Boats, I've also found out through a recent probate that they can also be added, a beneficiary can be added on boats. So that's something that I don't believe we traditionally think about when it comes to an asset transferring to someone else. And if anyone's anything like me, getting me and my wife to go to the car dealership to buy the car is impossible with kids.
Oh yeah.
So the cars are my own name, which means both cars would have to pass through probate to Jen if I predecease her. So, and I'm sure a lot of people are like that, trying to get both spouses to sign the deed to the car. So those are a couple of tips on beneficiary designations.
Real quick, Greg and Joe, with the beneficiaries, you're able to check per stirpes on like applications. Can you explain a little bit what that is and why you wouldn't and would or wouldn't check that box?
Yeah, I think, Greg, you brought up a good point about sort of the psychological hurdle to get over to get planning done on the estate side. And I think the circle or stage of life that three of us are in, right, is young kids, busy, two spouses to get the same place to buy a car or sit down and talk about wills is difficult because sometimes, like with your spouse, you're strangers in the night of like get through your day, see each other for an hour, sleep, do it again.
Right.
So I think this stage, it's like just the time to be able to do that. And then I think when you see people, 60s, 70s, 80s that haven't done it, it's maybe just facing mortality of like that conversation or haven't updated it. I'll meet people that are 65 and haven't updated their documents in 30 years or something to that effect. So like there's both of those. But the per stirpes part of that is, so we have young kids. Thankfully, everybody's healthy in our families. But if we think about sort of a generation up for like our parents, sadly, what may happen is for let's say that the couple's in their 70s and one of their children has passed away, but they have grandchildren from that child. So a per stirpes designation means the share that would have gone to the child who's deceased but left descendants essentially follows, what you would think of as kind of like a bloodline there, right? And it can be adopted as well. But per stirpes would say, okay, the share that would have gone to my child is going to go in part to their children, as opposed to per capita, which is if that child is deceased, then it goes to the other children. So if I passed away before my parents and they had per stirpes, the assets that they would have left to me go to my children versus going to my siblings, which is per capita. Did I get that right, Greg?
Yeah, that absolutely. And one of the times that I can highlight per capita makes a lot of sense is when we're talking to generation one and in reference to generation three, where it's grandchildren. Most of the time, I know there's the exceptions, they want to treat grandkids equally. So you say per capita when it pertains to the grandchildren. So then each grandchild gets the equal amount, irregardless of how many siblings that grandchild has, would be a good example. And then one last thing to mention is looking up a generation. So I mentioned facing my or your own mortality, talking about parents, and you talk about not leaving a mess behind. You're the one that's going to have to deal with, most likely, or your siblings, your parents. And going to your parents to talk about their mortality, their estate documents, their financials is really, really hard. So one of the things that we'd like to offer our clients is we can have that conversation with your parents. Try to eliminate the awkwardness that could become of that, because it's really hard when your parents have things that they don't tell anyone about. So let's talk about it now to try to save, your hair or whatever you want to reference when things get stressful, when you're trying to figure out what were in your parents' heads when they did things.
Really good info, guys. Well, we're at 5 minutes, so
Did
Yeah.
Julie say, Greg?
have a good day,
All right,
guys.
have a good day.